General Tom Reed sat alone in his small room on the Alliance ship Resolute *. The blue light from his screen lit up his tired face. He read the message again, not quite believing what it said. After 87 years of war between the Alliance and the Coalition, after billions of deaths across dozens of star systems, the Alliance Council had made a choice that surprised everyone. They had picked Reed, a human, to lead all Alliance forces. No human had ever held such power in the Alliance before. Most Alliance leaders came from older alien races who had been traveling space for thousands of years. Humans were newcomers, only joining the wider galaxy about 200 years ago. Reed ran his hand through his short gray hair. He knew why they had chosen him. The Battle of Proxima last month had been a disaster. The Coalition had destroyed 3 Alliance fleets in a single day. The Alliance was losing the war badly, and they needed something different. Humans had a reputation for thinking in ways other species did not. The Alliance was desperate enough to try anything, even putting the human in charge. A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," Reed said. Lieutenant Jack Wilson entered, carrying a small computer tablet. Wilson was young for his job, but war created quick promotions. Too many dead officers meant too many empty positions to fill. "The latest reports, sir," Wilson said, handing over the tablet. His eyes moved to the official message still on Reed's screen. "So it's true. You're the new Supreme Commander." Reed nodded. "As of 600 tomorrow." He looked at the casualty numbers on the tablet and sighed. Another 5,000 Alliance soldiers dead on the Arcturus front. "Congratulations, sir," Wilson said without smiling. "Though I'm not sure anyone should be congratulated for being handed command of a losing war." Reed stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, he could see repair ships fixing battle damage on 3 Alliance cruisers. The same cruisers that had been damaged last month, and the month before. "Tell me, Wilson," Reed said, still looking out the window. "How long have you been fighting in this war?" 7 years, sir." "I've been fighting it for 28 years, Reed said. "My father fought in it for 40 years before me. Do you know what hasn't changed in all that time?" Wilson waited. "The way we fight," Reed continued. "Attack pattern Alpha, defense formation Beta, retreat protocol Gamma. The same tactics for nearly a century, and we keep losing, bit by bit." "The Coalition uses the same old tactics too," Wilson pointed out. "Yes," Reed said, turning back to face his aide. "And that's why they think they've won already. They can see the end coming, following the same old path." A small smile appeared on Reed's face. "That's our advantage." Wilson looked confused. "Sir, they expect us to keep fighting the same way until we lose," Reed explained. "They don't expect a human to change the rules." He picked up the tablet again, studying a map of Alliance and Coalition positions across the galaxy. "Ask Command to send me all battle records for the last 10 years, every engagement, every outcome." "All of them, sir." "That's thousands of battles." "All of them," Reed confirmed. "And Wilson, I want our ship ready to leave in 2 days. We're going to visit the front lines. All of them." "That could take months, sir." "Then we better get started." Reed's eyes had a new energy in them. "This war has gone on long enough. It's time someone remembered what the point of fighting is." "And what is that, sir?" Wilson asked. "To win," Reed said simply. "Not to keep fighting forever, but to win and stop the dying." He picked up his officer's cap and put it on. "The Coalition thinks this war will never end. They're wrong." Wilson straightened his back and nodded. "Yes, sir. I'll make the arrangements." As Wilson left, Reed looked once more at his new orders. Supreme Commander of the Alliance forces. After 87 years of stalemate, the Council had finally done something truly different. They had put a human in charge, and Reed was going to make sure they didn't regret it. For 4 weeks, General Reed visited battle sites across 12 star systems. His ship, the Resolute *, jumped from one front line to the next. At each stop, Reed would walk among the troops, ask questions, and watch battles unfold. What he saw troubled him deeply. On the ice planet Tundra, Reed stood with local officers in a command bunker. Through the viewing screen, they watched as coalition ships attacked the Alliance defense line at exactly the same time they had attacked yesterday and the day before. "They're very predictable," said Major Thompson, the base commander. "Every day at 900, they begin their attack. By 1700, they pull back to regroup." Reed frowned. "And what do? We hold our position until they retreat. Then we advance to Point Delta before setting up defenses for the night," Thompson replied. He seemed proud of this routine. "How long has this been going on?" Reed asked. "This particular battle? About 7 months now, sir." Reed shook his head in disbelief. 7 months of the same attacks, the same defenses, day after day. No wonder the war had lasted for 87 years. The mining colony of Epsilon 9 was Reed's next stop. As his shuttle landed, he could see coalition ships in the distance, bombing the colony's outer defenses. Commander Gray met him at the landing pad. She was a tall woman with a hard face that had seen too much war. "Welcome to our little corner of the endless war, General," she said, saluting. As they walked through the underground base, Reed asked the question that had been bothering him for weeks now. "Commander, why do both sides fight the same way day after day? Don't your officers ever suggest new tactics?" Gray laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You must be new to high command, sir. The Alliance war doctrine was written by the founding species, the Alterans and the Proteans. They'd been fighting wars this way for thousands of years." They entered a command room where officers watched screens showing the coalition bombardment. "See that?" Gray pointed to a screen where coalition ships were pulling back. "Right on time. They'll stop for exactly 3 hours, then hit us again from the west." "And we let them?" Reed asked. "It's how war is done," Gray explained. "They attack, we defend. They retreat, we advance a little. But never too far. Next month, we'll push them back to the outer moons. Then they'll counterattack. It's like a dance where both sides know all the steps." Reed watched as Alliance ships moved into standard formation. "And no one questions this. The Council species consider it civilized warfare," Gray said. "They have rules. Times to fight, times to rest. Places you can attack, places you don't." A young officer approached them. "Coalition fleet is repositioning to Sector 4, exactly as expected, Commander." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Gray said. She turned to Reed. "See, no surprises." Reed was quiet for a long moment. "Commander, how many people have died on this colony since the fighting began?" "About 8,000 military, 3,000 civilians." "And the coalition?" "Similar numbers, we believe." Reed looked at the screens again. The predictable war, with its predictable death toll, continuing day after day, year after year. "Civilized or not," Reed finally said, "it's killing us." As they left the command room, Reed asked, "What would happen if we didn't follow the expected pattern? If we attacked during their rest period, or struck at their supply lines instead of their battle groups?" Gray looked shocked. "Sir, that would be considered ungentlemanly. The Council would never approve." Reed stopped walking. "Commander Gray, I want you to prepare a report for me. Every weakness you've observed in the Coalition's routine, every opportunity we miss because of these rules of war. Can you do that?" Gray hesitated. "That's not how we fight, sir." "That's exactly the problem," Reed said firmly. "We need to stop fighting like we have been for 87 years. We need to start fighting to win." As Reed returned to his shuttle, Lieutenant Wilson was waiting. "Next stop is the Procyon front, sir. More of the same there." Reed nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "More of the same, Lieutenant, but not for much longer." The large meeting room aboard the Resolute was filled with Alliance commanders. Some were human, but most belonged to the older alien races of the Alliance. All eyes were on General Reed as he stood by the glowing map of Alliance and Coalition territories. "Thank you for coming," Reed began. "I spent the last month visiting our forces across 12 systems. What I've seen has convinced me that we need to change our approach to this war." The room was quiet. Reed touched the map, and 6 star systems lit up in red. "We are going to abandon our defensive positions in these 6 systems," he announced. The silence broke. Several commanders began talking at once. Admiral Stone, a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin, stood up. "General Reed, those colonies house millions of Alliance citizens." Stone's voice was sharp with anger. "We cannot abandon them." Reed held up his hand. "I said we would abandon our defensive positions. Admiral, not the people. We will evacuate all civilians and non-essential personnel first." Reed zoomed in on the map to show the Coalition supply lines stretching through the Sirius sector. "The Coalition expects us to defend those positions to the last ship because that's what we've always done," Reed continued. "But while they're busy taking those systems, we will launch a massive strike here." He pointed to a cluster of planets deep in Coalition space. Commander Voss, a human officer from Earth colonies, leaned forward. "What's the target, sir?" "Their fuel processing facilities," Reed answered. "The Coalition's military doctrine requires them to maintain fuel reserves for exactly 1 standard year. No more, no less. They believe anything less would be dishonorable." Several of the alien commanders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them, Admiral Cran of the Alterans, stood up. "General Reed, targeting fuel supplies violates the 3rd protocol of civilized warfare," Cran said. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, showing his distress. "We attack military targets only." Reed walked slowly around the table. "Admiral Cran, how long have you been fighting in this war?" 43 years, General." "And in those 43 years, how close have we come to winning?" Cran looked down. "We are preserving our way of life." "We are dying," Reed said flatly. "Billions have died already. If we continue to fight this war by these so-called civilized rules, billions more will die." Reed returned to the map. "I studied the history of human warfare. Do you know what we learned over thousands of years of conflict on Earth?" The room was silent. "We learned that the most important rule of war is to end it as quickly as possible." Reed looked at each commander in turn. "The Coalition follows these ancient protocols because they benefit from the stalemate. They're slowly winning through attrition. We need to change the game." Major Tam, a young officer from the outer colonies, raised her hand. "Sir, what about the civilians in those 6 systems? Even with evacuation, many won't leave their homes." "That's why the evacuation begins tomorrow," Reed said. "You will have 3 weeks to move as many people as possible. After that, our forces pull out." Admiral Stone was still standing. "The Alliance Council will not approve this plan, General. It goes against everything we stand for." Reed nodded. "I've already spoken to the Council. They didn't approve, but they didn't forbid it either. They're desperate enough to let me try." He closed the map display. "I know what I'm asking goes against your training and traditions. Humanity learned long ago that war isn't about honor or tradition. It's about ending the fighting as quickly as possible, so people can live in peace." The room was quiet again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence. "Operation Thunderbreak begins in 3 weeks, Reed said. "Return to your commands and prepare." Dismissed. As the commanders filed out, Lieutenant Wilson approached Reed. "That went better than expected, sir," Wilson said quietly. Reed shook his head. "Half of them think I'm a barbarian, and the other half think I'm going to get us all killed." "And what do you think, sir?" Reed looked at the map one more time. "I think it's time someone remembered what war is for, Wilson. Not to fight forever, but to win peace." General Reed stood on the bridge of the Resolute Asterisk, watching as the great ship moved through the darkness of space. Around him, 20 Alliance warships flew in tight formation. Their target, the Sirius system, deep in Coalition territory. "Status report," Reed said to the bridge crew. Lieutenant Wilson looked up from his screen. "The Coalition forces are moving exactly as predicted, sir. They've sent 8 battle groups to claim the systems we abandoned." Reed nodded. The first part of his plan was working. The Coalition, true to their traditions, had rushed to take the undefended Alliance systems. Just as Reed had expected, they had sent most of their ships to claim this easy victory. "And our strike force?" Reed asked. "Commander Hill's group is in position," another officer replied. "They're ready to hit the secondary fuel facilities once we engage the primary targets." Reed checked the time. In 3 minutes, they would exit hyperspace directly above the Coalition's main fuel processing center in the Sirius system. There would be defenses, but nothing like what they would have faced if the Coalition had known they were coming. "All hands, battle stations," Reed ordered. "Prepare for hyperspace exit." The bridge crew worked quickly, checking systems and readying weapons. Reed felt the familiar tension before battle. This operation would either change the course of the war or end in disaster. 10 seconds to exit, called the navigation officer. Reed gripped the railing. "May fortune favor the bold," he said quietly. The stars reappeared as the Resolute burst out of hyperspace. Below them hummed the massive fuel processing station, a sprawling complex that supplied a third of the Coalition fleet. For a moment, there was confusion on the Coalition side. Their sensors showed Alliance ships where none should be. By the time alarms sounded, Reed's fleet had already opened fire. "Target their defense systems first," Reed ordered. "Then hit the main processing cores." The battle was fierce. Coalition ships rushed to defend the station, but they had been caught by surprise. Within an hour, the main facility was burning, its fuel supplies exploding in great balls of fire. Reed's communicator beeped. "Sir," came Commander Hill's voice. "We've engaged the secondary targets. Heavy resistance, but we're breaking through." "Good work, Hill. Keep." A massive explosion rocked the Resolute. Reed was thrown across the bridge. Warning alarms blared. "Direct hit on our port side," shouted the damage control officer. "Shields down to 30%. Reed pulled himself up, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. Status of Hill's group. Wilson's face was grim as he checked his screen. "Sir, Commander Hill's ship was destroyed. No survivors detected." Reed closed his eyes for a moment. Hill had been a good officer, a friend. But there was no time for grief now. "Continue the attack," he ordered. "All ships, focus fire on the remaining storage tanks." For 2 more hours, the battle raged. The Resolute took heavy damage, losing engines and weapon systems. But in the end, Reed's gambit succeeded. Both the primary and secondary fuel facilities were destroyed. As the Alliance fleet limped away from Sirius, Reed stood by the main view screen, watching the burning remains of the facilities grow smaller. "Sir," Wilson said, approaching with a medical kit for Reed's head wound. "Reports are coming in from across Coalition space. Their ships are being ordered to conserve fuel. They're already feeling the effects." Reed nodded slowly. "Send a message to Alliance Command. Operation Thunderbreak was successful. Phase 2 begins now." "Phase 2, sir." Reed turned to face his aide. "Open a direct channel to the Coalition Supreme Command." Wilson looked shocked. "Sir, we don't talk to the enemy during active operations. It's against the protocols of civilized warfare." Reed finished for him. "Yes, I know. But it's time we tried something truly radical, Wilson." "What's that, sir?" Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Negotiation before total victory. Something neither side has attempted in 87 years of war." As the communications officer worked to establish the unheard-of direct link to Coalition Command, Reed prepared himself for the most important conversation of his life, one that might finally end the endless war. The Alliance Council chamber was filled with angry voices, At the center stood General Reed, his uniform still showing signs of the battle at Sirius. His face was calm, but inside he felt the tension of this moment. "General Reed has broken the most sacred traditions of warfare," shouted the Alteran representative, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in anger. "Targeting fuel supplies is forbidden by the Third Protocol." Another council member, a tall Procyon with silver skin, stood up, and opening direct communication with the enemy during active combat. Unheard of. General Reed's actions have dishonored the Alliance. The human representative, Ambassador Lee, tried to speak but was shouted down by several alien members. The meeting had been going this way for over an hour. Finally, the council leader, an old Centaurian named Thal, raised his hand for silence. The room gradually quieted. "General Reed," said Thal, his voice deep and serious, "you were given command of our forces to win the war, not to abandon our principles. What do you have to say for yourself?" Reed stepped forward. The wound on his head was still healing, and he was tired from days of battle and little sleep. But his voice was strong. "With respect, Council Leader," he began, "there is no such thing as civilized warfare. There is only warfare and the suffering it brings. My mission was to end this war, not to perpetuate it. By breaking our most sacred rules," a council member shouted. Reed looked at each council member in turn. "Those rules have kept this war going for 87 years. They've become a comfortable routine for both sides. Attack, defend, retreat, advance, all according to schedule. Meanwhile, billions have died." Reed touched a control, and a large map appeared in the center of the room. It showed coalition ships across dozens of star systems, many of them blinking red. "These red markers show coalition ships that are now immobilized because they lack fuel," Reed explained. "For the first time in decades, the Alliance has a real advantage. We could destroy these ships, or we could use this moment to end the fighting." The human ambassador, Lee, finally managed to speak. "Council members, reports are coming in from all fronts. Coalition forces are retreating across multiple systems. They've abandoned 3 of the systems they just took from us. We are winning." This news caused a stir in the room. The council members whispered among themselves. "And the direct communication with Coalition Command?" asked Thal. "What came of this breach of protocol?" Reed straightened his back. "The Coalition's Supreme Commander, Admiral Dorn, has agreed to meet with me in neutral space. He's willing to discuss terms." The room erupted again, some voices angry, others surprised. "Terms?" The Alteran representative was shocked. "They're willing to negotiate." "They have little choice," Reed said simply. "Their fleet can't move without fuel." The council debated for hours. Some members still called for Reed to be removed from command. Others were beginning to see the value in his unorthodox approach. In the end, they reached a compromise. Reed would remain Supreme Commander, but an Alliance Council representative would join him for any meetings with the Coalition. As Reed left the chamber, Lieutenant Wilson was waiting. "How did it go, sir?" he asked. Reed sighed. "About as well as expected. Half the council thinks I'm a war criminal. The other half is starting to wonder if I might be right." "And what happens now?" "Now we prepare for the hardest part," Reed said. "Making peace is always more difficult than making war, Wilson." As they walked through the council building, a message arrived from the front lines. 3 more coalition battle groups had surrendered without firing a shot, their fuel reserves completely depleted. "Congratulations, sir," Wilson said. "You're winning the war and making enemies of our allies at the same time." Reed smiled slightly. "If they hate me but their children live in peace, I can accept that trade." The neutral space station orbiting Ta Ceti was old and simple, built long before the war. For centuries, it had served as a meeting place for different species. Now it would host the most important meeting in 87 years. General Reed sat at one end of a long table. With him were Lieutenant Wilson and Ambassador Mira, the Council's chosen representative. At the other end sat Admiral Dorn, the Coalition's Supreme Commander, and his advisors. Dorn was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. Like many Coalition species, he had 4 arms. All 4 were currently folded across his chest in a defensive posture. This meeting violates all protocols of proper negotiation. Dorn began, his voice formal and cold. Discussions should only begin after the traditional period of conflict assessment, not during active operations. Reed nodded respectfully. I understand that we are breaking with tradition, Admiral. But after 87 years of war, perhaps new approaches are needed. Dorn began a formal declaration of grievances, a traditional opening that could take days. Reed listened for a few minutes, then held up his hand. Admiral Dorn, Reed interrupted. We both know why we're here. Your forces cannot continue fighting effectively, and mine can. But I don't want unconditional surrender. I want a lasting peace. Dorn's black eyes narrowed. You speak of peace, yet you attacked our fuel facilities. A dishonorable act. I attacked your ability to continue the war, Reed corrected. And now I'm offering a chance to end it. Ambassador Mira looked uncomfortable with Reed's direct approach, but she remained silent. Reed activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a map of the border systems between Alliance and Coalition space. I propose something neither side has tried before, Reed said. A joint security force to patrol these border systems, with command rotating between species from both the Alliance and Coalition. One of Dorn's advisors made a sound of disbelief. Share command with the enemy? Impossible. Reed continued. This war began over resources and territory. But it continues because of pride and tradition. We need to break that cycle. For the first time, Dorn looked interested. Explain this joint force. For the next hour, Reed outlined his plan. Ships would carry both Alliance and Coalition crew members. Decisions would require agreement from both sides. Any disputes would go to a new council with equal representation. This would never work, one of Dorn's advisors insisted. Our people have been enemies for generations. So were many species on Earth, my home planet, Reed responded. Yet they learned to work together. Admiral Dorn was silent for a long time. Finally, he asked, what about the systems your forces abandoned, which we claimed? And what about our ships that are now without fuel? Reed had expected this question. The border systems will return to neutral status, under joint protection. As for your stranded ships, we will help provide emergency fuel to return them to Coalition space. Dorn's advisors began whispering urgently to each other. This offer was unexpected. Why would you do this? Dorn asked suspiciously. You could destroy those ships. Because I want peace, Admiral, not more destruction. Reed said simply. Destroying your ships might win us this battle, but it wouldn't end the cycle of war. Dorn studied Reed for a long moment. You are very different from previous Alliance commanders. Human. Humans haven't been fighting this war for thousands of years like the other species, Reed said. We still remember that the purpose of war is to achieve peace, not to fight forever. For the first time, Dorn unfolded his arms. I will need to consult with Coalition leadership. This is unprecedented. Reed nodded. Of course. We'll adjourn until tomorrow. As they left the meeting room, Ambassador Mira turned to Reed. That went better than expected, General. But many on both sides will oppose this plan. Yes, Reed agreed. Hardliners always prefer fighting to compromise. But I think Admiral Dorn is tired of this endless war too. The negotiations would be difficult. Centuries of hatred and tradition wouldn't disappear overnight. But for the first time in 87 years, both sides were actually talking about peace. 1 year had passed since General Reed took command of the Alliance forces. He stood on the observation deck of the Resolute Asterisk, watching through the large window as ships moved through space before him. But these were not ships preparing for battle. Alliance and Coalition vessels flew side by side, practicing joint maneuvers. Their crews were learning to work together after generations of fighting each other. The door slid open and Admiral Stone entered. The tall alien looked tired but relaxed, very different from the angry officer who had confronted Reed a year ago. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Stone said, joining Reed by the window. Reed nodded. "I never thought I'd see it happen so quickly." "I opposed your methods, General," Stone admitted, "but I cannot argue with the results. 87 years of war ended in just one." "Not ended yet," Reed cautioned. "The peace is still new and fragile." They watched as a coalition cruiser and an alliance destroyer practiced a complex flying pattern together. Just months ago, those same ships would have been trying to destroy each other. "I hear they're calling it the Reed Doctrine at the Academy now," Stone said, "using unpredictable tactics against numerically superior forces, breaking the established patterns of warfare." Reed smiled slightly. "That misses the point entirely." "Oh, and what is the point, General?" "The doctrine isn't about tactics," Reed explained. "It's about remembering what war is supposed to accomplish. Not glory, not honor, just peace." The door opened again, and Lieutenant Wilson hurried in. His face showed excitement. "Sir, the final treaty has been ratified." Wilson held up a data tablet. "Both the Alliance Council and Coalition leadership approved it an hour ago. The war is officially over." Reed took the tablet, reading the document carefully. After so many decades of conflict, it seemed almost unreal to see the formal declaration of peace. "Any problems with the vote?" Reed asked. "Some, sir," Wilson replied. 3 Alliance species and 2 coalition groups voted against it. They wanted to continue fighting. "There will always be those who prefer war to peace," Stone said sadly. Reed handed the tablet back to Wilson. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Please inform the crew. They deserve to celebrate." After Wilson left, Reed turned back to the window. The joint fleet continued their exercises, growing more coordinated with each passing day. "What happens now, General?" Stone asked. "The Joint Security Force will patrol the border regions," Reed said. "Mixed crews, rotating command. The neutral trading zones will reopen. Families separated by war can reunite." "And what about you?" Stone asked. "You've made history, the human who ended the endless war." Reed shook his head. "I'm just tired, Admiral. Like everyone else who's been fighting too long." A small ship detached from the coalition cruiser and flew toward the Resolute *. It carried Admiral Dorn, coming for the first official meeting of the Joint Command Council. "I should go prepare," Reed said. "Maintaining peace will be harder than winning the war." As Reed walked to the door, Stone called after him. "You know, General, many still disagree with your methods, breaking traditions that stood for thousands of years." Reed paused. "What's your opinion, Admiral?" Stone looked at the mixed fleet outside the window. "I think about all the lives that would have been lost if the war had continued another year, another 10 years, another 87 years. He turned to Reed. "I think some traditions needed to be broken." Reed nodded and left the observation deck. As he walked through the corridors of the Resolute *, crew members stopped to salute or nod respectfully. 1 year ago, they had been part of a losing military machine, fighting a war they couldn't win but couldn't end. Now they were the guardians of a new peace. When Reed reached the meeting room, he paused at the door. Beyond it waited the future, complicated, uncertain, but freed from the endless cycle of predictable warfare that had claimed so many lives. A human general had taken charge, and the endless war had finally ended.